have that one in the Stream Deck right now.
Okay.
The I Kick Ass for the Lord thing.
Okay.
I neglected to get that into the Stream Deck right now.
Uh, next
Um,
time.
yeah, next time. Um, unless it's if it's right in this folder. Hold on. I'm gonna search.
Do you have Bowie's Prayer in the Stream Deck?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have because that one is in the cloud right now.
Uh,
Grills, heresy and hearsay, audio. Yeah, I don't have that file handy enough to throw it in there quick. So next time.
okay. That's fine.
Next time.
Okay. That's fine.
Next time.
Okay. That's
Sure. Okay.
Let's do this then.
The hell was that? Oh, Twitch. Put this somewhere else. I'm gonna close some tabs. Oof, I look rough today. We will open the book. Its pages are blank. We are going to put words on them ourselves. The book is called Opportunity, and its first chapter is New Year's Day. Edith Lovejoy Pierce.
And I say this to you to the night. Let us not forget there is hope. Crystal Method.
'Cause love's such an old-fashioned word, and love dares you to care for the people on the edge of the night, and love people on the streets. Dares you to change our way of caring about ourselves. This is our last dance. This is our last dance. This is ourselves under pressure. David Bowie and Queen.
For I know the plans that I have for you, declared the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and the future. Jeremiah 29:11. Let's put 2020 to bed once and for all.
Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm September, and you can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9 of 12, and you can hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Heresy and Hearsay has a Patreon site. You can find that at patreon.com/heresy and hearsay, where you can visit and help support us. Just $2 a month goes a long way to help us make this humble show. You can also contribute with bits in Twitch or subscribe for free if you have Amazon Prime. With me is the man with the word about the word, Reverend Barney.
Salutation, true believers. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. You can also follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe. Also, give us a review that helps others find us. And we also have a new and improved website. Just look for our new improved website. Just look to listen to our past shows, as well as to find the bios about each of us at heresyandhearsay.com. So before we get into what was a planned show last week before, well, we know what happened, we do want to touch on to last. Um, things are moving really fast. In fact, there was not a briefing until today from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, Capitol Police, and everything. That didn't happen until this afternoon. So there's a lot of moving parts that are still going on, and I feel as the show is more of a review discussion show versus a breaking news show, it would be better for us to see what happened, to get that information and us to be able to digest it, for us to discuss it in a cooler heads and a more logical manner, and try to digest as much of it as possible. There's plenty of anger already out there, um, and you can watch plenty of videos with the anger. And I'm sure for myself, I can say there is anger, but we also want to come at this with information as well as a discussion. We don't want to come at this with strict emotions. At least I'm speaking for myself. I'm pretty sure September agrees with me on that.
Hmm.
So next week we will have information. We will have a discussion about what we know. Will there be emotions involved? Probably, but we will have a discussion and be able to give you as much information as we have out there that is from reliable sources and let you know exactly what's going on. It'll also be the day before the inauguration so that we have all of that information so that we can give it in a very um, matter of fact, very fact based information because that's what we want to do is to give you all the information up front. So that's why we're not doing that today. This was a show that was planned last week, and then, well, last week happened. It was a long last week. It feels like it feels like years has passed in 2 weeks. So um, we wanted to do this show because we wanted to highlight that there was some good things that happened in 2020 and that we should find hope in 2020 so that we can find hope in 2021. And I know this year hasn't started off well, but there's still hope. And I'm sorry, I'm coming off a cold,
Mm.
so I'm a little coffee and I apologize. So, what we're going to do is we're going to have a discussion of our top three good news when it comes to political good news, our top three social good news, and our top three what I feel is faith based information. So, let's start with political, at least the list that I have, and September can add on with her information and what she feels. So my number three, and I'm going down the list. My number three is state GOP leaders step up after the election. Um, I feel that is highly important that we had so many, especially in the Georgia, that there were so many of those elected officials, the Secretary of State and the governor and everything, pushing back on the um, rampant misinformation, the rampant lies about the voter suppression, not voter suppression, I apologize, but about the voter fraud, quote unquote, and about the vote being stolen
Or lack thereof.
or lack thereof, correct. And the fact that um, they stood up to the president, to the former, soon to be former president, and said, no, we're not going to do your bidding just because you think you should be elected president again. And I think that was very important that they took their oath of office more important than they took um, than
Blind
their
loyalty.
party line.
Yeah,
And I think that was extremely important. So I think that's a big deal.
sure. Ones that did
Yeah, I mean, I, I, I know we're looking back. It's really hard to look back at this and go, "Yeah, that was great," and then you go back a couple of days to you, Jesus Christ, it's really hard to do this one. I know, but especially when you look at Georgia and stuff like that, and you look at those individuals in Georgia, especially, and what they faced in Georgia, the death threats and the mob and everything else, and how they stood up against that, that should be commended. That
Hmm.
should be, brought to the forefront. And I think that's extremely important. And I think that's something that should be said, that we may disagree with people on the other side of the aisle, but when they do something like that, when they stand up for that oath that they took and they did the right thing, I think that's extremely important. And I think that's a good thing that there are people with principles out there on the other side of the aisle that are doing the right thing. And I know right now we're seeing a lot, and I think it's more important and more evidence right now, especially considering the fact that, we're seeing so many people that weren't willing to do that, that there were these individuals that were.
I view politics and holding office as um, a public service position, and so
Hmm.
yes, I am very encouraged by. I I feel like, and it's gonna increase. I hope as we get more younger, idealistic people in, um, and the old guard leaves, that we're gonna see more people of that mind who, um, I mean, Obama's winning back in '08 was such a movement as far as activism and just a whole change in people being empowered to um, have a voice in their government in a civil way and engage in civil discourse. And I think there's enough people that stayed around from that movement that we're going to see more of this. And politicians, people in office are going to have to respond to an engaged, like now we have all these media apps too where we're writing. I think they're getting more communication from constituents than ever, and they have to respond or they'll start losing votes. And that's how it's supposed to work, is more people involved. That's how it works, instead of everyone kind of was apathetic, not paying attention to what any of them do, unless somebody makes a stink about it. And people would say one thing, get elected, do another thing, and nobody paid attention, and they would just keep the office because people weren't paying attention, and they just voted for whatever name they recognized or didn't vote at all. And with the level of engagement we're reaching now, and the age demographics of people that are paying attention, I hope to see more of people just holding to their word, and instead of getting burnt out by being pressured by lobbies and those financial interests and corporations from the top down, the way our government has been operating, that it's going to work better bottom up the way it is designed to.
Right. And I think, and that leads right into the second point. The second good thing in politics is that no matter what you think, and no matter what happened, the last 4 years, there were more people engaged in politics than ever before. We had the largest election ever in this nation, and I know that's population and everything, but just looking at the percentage of the population that was energized to vote, that got out to vote, and everything else. When you look at the percentage of people that voted, that was a huge deal. There was a lot of people engaged. There was a lot of people engaged in activism. There was a lot more people engaged in making phone calls and everything else. And so there, social media, there's a lot of people that decry it, but it got a lot of people engaged. And yeah, on both sides, and there's pros and cons to that, as we've found out, but it has engaged people in this. And I think that if we can find a way to make it to where it is done in a certain way, to where it is, I hate to use the word monitored, but where it is used in a good way, or not a good, but where it is fact checked, I guess is the best use I can, and people believe in the fact checking. And we get back to a rule of facts, I think that this kind of engagement will continue, and I think it's a good thing to have that many people engaged.
Yeah, I think a key to that might be trying to focus on our educational system. And I know that I've talked to a lot of teachers and different kinds of educators, and watched what my kids were taught in school and things that other schools haven't been doing. Um, for instance, early in elementary school, my kids were taught, because they kind of went to a charter and it was liberal arts based. Well, the one, and then the second one is college prep based, but they were taught, and this is more difficult now that it's not a newspaper the kid can sit with as much as you have online stuff, but I think it needs to be more aggressively taught because we have so much information available on the internet, that's true and false. But my kids were taught, and we could discuss together, and parents should discuss this with their children, the way to discern the difference between information, news, and propaganda, and how to check sources and see if they're reliable. And I mean, to me, there's just added layers of that being easier on the internet, because you can find out who owns a website. You can, but you have to know how to do that. And if they're hiding that, well, gosh, then maybe find another source.
Right,
But there are ways to fact check, and there are ways that just linguistically you can point out and see, like, that looks like propaganda, let me check somewhere else. There are
right,
red flags, and if we can put that back in our system, there would be a lot less of this paranoid conspiracy, fake news, journalists are either left or right or whatever, which shouldn't be happening anyway. um,
right,
but that's difficult to balance with laws, because it can, border on censorship. I have said before, I'll say again, other countries that impose things like, okay, you can't call yourself news unless you have this percentage of actual informational content. Like, if your opinion, like Fox News doesn't even pass, they don't pass Al Jazeera's standard of, there's so much opinion
right.
spouted on there, it cannot be called a news station in other countries. And I don't think that's a censorship. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's more akin to truth in advertising. You
Right.
want advertisers to have to tell you the truth. And why would you not want your journalism to have to be giving you more truth than opinion? There are places for opinion, and
Eh,
that's free speech, and that's great. But that's
right.
not your news.
Right. No, and I agree with that. That there should be there's opinion, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy my opinion pieces too. But there should also be a place where I get the news and it's just news. The other thing, and you talked about education and stuff like that, and this was something that was brought up, is Seth Meyers brought this up a couple of times, talking about this is not the first time that there was an insurrection that was attempted. Only this time it succeeded, and it was in our state, in the state of North Carolina, in 1898. There was a insurrection of a duly elected township
In
in
Wilmington.
Wilmington,
Yep.
right? And I didn't know about that until like 5, 10 years ago. It wasn't taught in any of my school books, But this is something. And then the leader of that actually became the governor of the state. Nobody talks about that in this
Hmm.
state. Nobody that it's glossed over that basically a white supremacist took over and a duly elected multicultural multiracial elected town officials burnt down black businesses, and took it over and changed the entire um, leadership in that city because it was multiracial. And there was no consequences to that. But nobody's taught that. It's like the whole Tucson massacre of Black Wall Street. Nobody's taught that in our schools, and those are things that they're afraid to teach in our schools, and those are things that we need to know in our school systems. These,
Yeah, there
this is
seems the companies, and there are reasons for that too. We can get into, but
yeah,
maybe we should do a show about that one time, about how our textbooks have been edited, and the information in them. suppressed and taken out selectively over the years, and things that were left in that were to glorify certain actions and important bits of history that we've been allowed to forget and are repeating because we weren't taught those
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
I mean, the brand new elected representative out in is it in Colorado and Denver who was actually encouraging the insurgents, like tweeting out
Are,
this today is 1776 and like
was she the? Are we talking about the one that was also tweeting?
I'm
Nancy
next to
Pelosi's,
Pelosi.
or she's left the rotunda or whatever. That
Yeah,
individual.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wow, all right. So she needs to go to jail. Definitely not be holding
Yeah.
office. But anyway, she's a hero to something right now, probably. So there's that.
So the last one, I'm going to change because when I wrote this was written 10 days ago. So forgive me, fellow viewers. I wrote this as like Biden won, sweet Lord. Wars to the Trump nightmare is over, and then I read this and I'm going, oh, you sweet innocent summer child, you you could how could you have known that what he could have done in
Well,
9 days? Oh,
it was
anyways.
optimistic to be sure.
Sorry, but yes, I do believe that there
We have
is
a lot of
hope.
healing to do. So
That
there's
yes,
that.
there's a lot of healing. I still believe that there's a lot of good that's going to come out of the Biden Harris um, presidency. I think there's a lot of good stuff that will be happening. I think that there has to be some healing, but there has to be some accountability. But I think that overall, I think we're doing a I think we've turned a page. I think, they have the House, they have the Senate, we have the presidency. I
Mm-hmm.
think we can do some good.
Here's hoping.
Here's
I'd
hoping.
like to mention something. I'm not sure what category I would put it in. I
Okay.
was terrible and didn't do notes, but I've been really busy. Uh, and going from one computer to another. So, uh, vaccinations started. So, that's on its way. That's some people, I know several people who've gotten them. I know people starting to get their schedule for their second round. So that's fantastic news. And I mean, is it political? Is it social? Is it here's the thing that I think is not being paid attention and fits in our purvey here on the show. This is government involvement in healthcare, and people aren't freaking out like, "Oh my god, get out of my, get the government out of my Medicaid," like dumbasses. It's just like, oh, of course, the government should be. I don't know why they're okay with it. Like, the government's gonna pump all this money into the vaccine, development, and then private companies did it instead of the government, but it's still being distributed free for the most part. Different states are wrangling for the funding and how to distribute it, but it is so, along with the testing for COVID, um, there's been a lot of free testing, and now there's free
Yep.
vaccine clinics, and people aren't looking at the fact that that's your tax dollars at work. That's
Yeah.
what we hear on, like, the left, whatever you want to call us. We believe that healthcare is a right, and people shouldn't just be dying because we don't want to deal with it, or because they can't afford to go get taken care of. And we are seeing in this instance this starting to work. Our tax dollars being used for the health of our nation. And it's I haven't seen anybody freaking out about that part.
Yeah.
People aren't, they're unable to get their vaccine because they're still working out distribution. They're still working out, but no one is. I have seen people not able to get the drugs Trump got, and that's another problem where we need to go ahead and let the government sort out and put regulation on these companies that distribute those drugs, so they have to get their shit together on the when, where, and how you can have access to life-saving drugs.
Yeah.
But with the vaccine, it seems to be rolling out pretty smoothly. And I mean, I guess people could argue that corporations are doing it, but that's not how it's being paid for. So this may be a bridge to further
Mhm.
compromise on getting a better nationalized system.
Yeah, I think this is important because, and it goes under political. I honestly think it would go more under political at this point because of the fact that it would bridge that gap between the Affordable Care Act and getting us to single payer or Medicare for all.
Yeah,
I
people
think,
might see that, oh, wow, okay, so that shit can work.
yeah. What yeah, once we get an administration that can actually do stuff and is ran by competent individuals, I think that they'll see how much smoother it is and everything else, and where they're focused on this versus focused on trying to, overturn an election. Because I mean, that's what basically it was. That we would have had more people vaccinated by now if the focus of the White House was on that, but it wasn't. So I mean, that's the situation. You can say what you want, but the focus of the White House was not on this. It was on the election and overturning the election, and that's all it was on. There was so once we get Biden in the White House, he's already got plans and everything. And as soon as the 21st of January comes around, he's going to have, it's going to accelerate hugely. Oh God, I just said, it's going to accelerate, and at that point, you'll see a lot more vaccinations coming through the pipeline. The problem
Hmm.
is that we don't have enough for everybody right now. Um, but by the summer, everybody should be vaccinated. So we'll see how that goes. Let's move to the social side and go over the top three I had for this. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that with us being stuck at home to protect ourselves and stuff, that there has been a lot more people working at home, and that businesses are now having to see that they can do business and have people work at home. We are a more service, like customer service. There's a lot of that kind of business kind of stuff, and businesses are seeing that a lot more people are wanting this as a permanent situation, and they're having to deal with that. And I think that there's been a lot of articles written about this, and we've had this discussion before. But I think this is going to be something that businesses are going to have to deal with. That this is going to be part of the new way of doing business in the United States. And you had mentioned the fact that this also opens up a lot of doors for those individuals with in the ADA side,
Hmm.
that would open up a lot more options for them. And I agree totally with that. And I think and I think with them working at home, doing like the job I do and stuff like that, once they got that set up for them, they would have this job would be something they could do, and there would be a lot more people working this kind of job. And I think this is something that I think our future is going to start seeing more of now that they've seen that their infrastructure can support it to some degree. I also see a lot of like schools moving more to this as an option for certain individuals. I do see that like we may lose snow days and stuff like this in the future because this will be an option for people.
Yep. I mean, I totally
Uh,
agree, and it's good. There are so many other social goods that could be done,
mhm.
enacted from that. You're not going to be limited to the access to the schools, for instance, because of transportation.
Yeah.
So there's that, let alone less pollution, less, fewer deaths from car
I
accidents. I mean, the reduction in traffic alone is potentially huge impact in several ways.
mhm. Um, and and that alone goes to my next one. And please pronounce her name because I'm really bad about it.
Greta Thunberg.
Yes, thank you very much. She again this year was on fire, though she was at home most of the time. Her Twitter game was amazing. Uh, she she posted something shortly after Donald Trump got booted from Twitter. It's like, and I was a danger, but look who still has Twitter.
Oh boy.
Oh, and so but she's been on fire, still being just this amazing advocate for the environment and being on top of her game. And to have that kind of passion at that age, I hope nothing diminishes that. And I hope more than anything else that she just turned 18, which means in a few more years she's going to be able to run for elected office. I don't think she will, but if she wants to, I honestly think she can do a lot of good in this world. And she is going to be a force to be reckoned with to make this world a better place. And I see a lot of good things in her future. Hopefully,
I want to see a whole lot more people her age
I
added
do.
to.
And the last one for the social is the Black Lives Matter movement really taking hold and being just more than just Black lives, being that everybody that people finally woke up. There were people that saw it, but this year, really, really, I honestly think there was so many people that just realized. I think it was just this perfect timing of us being stuck in our homes, watching TV, and being glued to the television and seeing George Floyd and seeing all of this, and then the tapestry going out from that of all of the other injustices happening right afterwards, and then the police feeding into it, that there was just so much that people woke up. And it was sad that it took that kind of situation for it to have that kind of effect, but I think it made a difference. And people are still talking about it. It's still on people's minds. When people were talking about the riot and the attack on the Capitol, people were saying, how easily those rioters just walked away, and it was not lost on anybody. If you listen to Stephen Colbert, if you listen to Seth Meyers, if you listen to any of the late night commentators, if you listen to any of the political commentators, especially on the left, they all brought up the fact that if they were black, this would have been a whole lot different because of the Black Lives Matter protests and how they were treated. And those comparisons are still in play. And I think that this movement still has a lot to do, but I think it's still very much in the zeitgeist of our nation and what it means to us, and that people are still very much aware of this. And I think that the repercussions of this will be felt. And I think that it's going to make a difference. And I think this is the first time, I honestly think, that we may actually face those demons that we haven't faced since before the Civil War, of the racism in this nation. I think we're going to eventually have to face those.
I would disagree. We haven't made any changes since then or faced any of this. I think that isn't very respectful to all the civil rights leaders through the 60s, 70s, 80s, even more recent. I think it definitely helped us get things like the Rights Act re-solidified in our new administration is definitely going to happen. It's not going to be swept under the rug that was um, so damaged during this administration because of the movement and the awareness currently. So
What I
yeah,
mean,
we have
what I
opportunities to
mean by
move
that, and
forward in ways we haven't in a long time.
I'm sorry.
But then yeah, we can move that forward, and hopefully the amount of people that are socially aware and stepping up of the amount of learning. The biggest change socially, I think, is going to be the amount of people, the self-reflection and learning that has been done by people of privilege,
Hmm.
and taking a hard look and making the effort to finally understand the privilege they have. That kind of empathy carrying forward could make a bigger difference than we've made socially in a long time. So I'll agree with that.
Okay. Well, I, what I mean by that is I think that we've been we've tried to move forward without trying to address it to the fullest. You know, we've put laws about the civil rights laws and stuff like that into place, but we still haven't like taught the history. We're still not willing to face it. You know, like we said earlier, you know, we're still not looking at those his parts of our history about, you know, these things that we've done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And
And with
I think
everybody
that's
stuck at
what
home and
where
BLM being in the forefront and everybody hearing about it, you're seeing huge sales of books that address all of those issues. People are self-educating in those manners in the way that our system failed them to begin with. So hopefully that bleeds into new leadership, getting it back into our actual education system going forward as well.
yeah, and I think that's what I meant is that we need to face those dark parts of our history that that we haven't been willing to face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not pretty and it's not glorious, and we've done a lot of bad things to people of color, and I think, and you know, with African Americans, Native Americans, and everything else, and we have to face those for us to be able to heal the wounds, because some of those wounds haven't been healed. And I think that's what I'm trying to say, and I
Yeah,
know
unfortunately, it
I'm
a lot of this gave excuses and emboldened and woke up the uh, less aware people
Mhm.
or the adamant racists to try and exert power. So that also has to be dealt with.
Yeah, no, I agree. um I'm just not wording myself properly, and I apologize. I'm just
No, it's fine. It's just a discussion. I'm just articulating stuff. I know we. It's what
no,
we're
no,
doing.
no,
We're having a discussion.
no. I'm just not finding the proper words as myself, so that's all.
Are
So
you using your new mic, by the way? I wanted to
I
ask.
am I'm not using my new
Okay.
mic because of the coughing. I have to
Okay.
or whatever. I'm having to mute
Yeah, I
myself, and
got
I
a
don't have
little
a mute on that.
interference messiness, just so our listeners know. That's a mic thing. I probably won't be able to fix.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's because of my coughing and stuff. I'm trying to mute myself, and I don't have a mute on the new mic, so I got to
Gotcha.
work on that. I got to get a device to plug into that, and I'm gonna get that very soon.
Okay.
So,
You know, you
uh,
could use the mute button in Discord.
oh well, I am technologically that
That's what
savvy.
I'm here
Okay.
for.
Anyways, um, next we're going. The last three that I want to touch on is my personal faith-based things that I wanted to say. Hey, these are some good things that happen in the world of faith. You know, we've seen a lot of people praying to the the spray tan false idol. too much. I wanted to point out good things that happened in faith. First off, that Mitt Romney consecutive was a person of his faith and a person of principle. I may disagree with Mitt Romney on a lot of things politically, but I can never say that he is not a person of his faith. And he demonstrated it again and again last year, and even into this year. Um, his speech after the riot and the insurrection was powerful. Look that up. That was he. I've Mitt Romney is not the type of person to get angry, and that is the closest I've ever seen to him being angry. And it was powerful and it was strong. But he was the only Republican to vote to remove Trump back at the original impeachment trial. He was out there marching with the Black Lives Matter protests. He had said that, he had called out his fellow congressmen and senators about going down this path of calling the election rigged or a fraudulent election, to the point where he had been that he had Trump supporters blistering him at the airport, and he stood his ground then. So he is a man of his principle and man of faith, and I have to give him props for that. Um, and I will stand by that. Would I vote for him for president? No, but would I support him as a human being and as a person of faith? I would. And I think that's extremely important that we call out those individuals of faith that stand by their faith and are actually good actors of their faith. Could any thoughts?
Oh, you can keep going. I'm not gonna. I mean, what have I got for faith? I mean, they're all true. I'm not in it for the same things you are. I mean, I was. I mean, I could talk about last week and how it's great. Like all the Norse pagans had the bravery to denounce the QAnon, self-proclaimed shaman. All those groups denounced him, and I wish Christian groups, all of them, would denounce Nazis because they claim they're Christian. So
Yeah.
that's what I got.
Well, that was great. And did you hear that that the judge finally allowed him to have his all organic meals at the prison?
Yep.
And I'm like, wow, okay, because
I
it's
mean,
a
we wouldn't
shaman.
begrudge somebody who wanted kosher
Yeah, I know,
meals,
I know.
right? So that's a little tricky, but not really, because there's no such thing as an organic shaman diet. Like he's making shit up to enforce his privilege, which is just ironic as fuck. Because I'm sure that's not why he thinks he's in this, right? He would never say he had any privilege, and then he's doing that. Like, this isn't Whole Foods, asshole. You're in jail. Sorry.
I know. It's yeah. Anyways, the second one is, so the Protestants, we don't have patron saints, but I plan on writing the Pope and to state, look, I know you don't canonize Protestants, but if you were to, Dolly Parton should be the patron saint of Protestants, because especially this year, she quietly helped fund research for one of the vaccines. She's a supporter of gay rights. She's quietly tried to, in her own way, be very supportive of people of color and of people, and try to change people's thoughts in her own little world of,
Mm-hmm.
especially of country music, and that very insular, very, you know, that world can be very, very problematic. and she has never been anything but a wonderful human being and a wonderful Christian woman. And her faith is just astounding. I wished I had as much faith. I wished I had a pinky's worth of her faith and her belief, because she is just, I can't, like I said, if the Protestants had, I don't believe in praying to saints, but she would, if we had one, I would pray to Dolly Parton, because she is just absolutely amazing woman. And this year has been a really good
Well, then
year.
she'd have to be dead, and you don't want that.
Yeah, no, I don't want that. No, but I definitely feel that she is a light to us to see that this very simple woman, because in a lot of ways she grew up in the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, and she grew up singing music and singing gospel and everything else, and she's always shown her Christianity and her faith in the most beautiful, simple ways. She's never like stood on a street corner shouting out her faith or anything. It's very simple, very beautiful, and
Well,
I
and
just,
actual acts, right?
yeah. Hmm.
of kindness and spreading her wealth.
um, and you can't, that's just something that is really powerful. So, that being said, do you have anything to say about our patron saint, Dolly Parton?
I think she's wonderful, and her book program is like the bomb. Like giving children books. You know what I'm talking
I do.
about. Okay.
I do. Um, she does a lot of good work with literacy and everything else.
Hmm.
Um, so I just wanted to give her a shout out. Last, uh, someone else that I admire, and he started out when Pat McCrory was governor of North Carolina. Every Monday, he would go out and he would do the Moral Mondays, and he would spend some time in jail doing these Moral Mondays. And he has revitalized, I believe, the poor, because this has been going on for years, but it's the Poor People's Campaign. And it is basically trying to reinvigorate and to bring attention to the poor people of the United States and their plight in this nation. And he has been a wonderful individual, and I'm talking about Dr. Reverend Barber. And this campaign has just taken off and been on fire this past year, doing a lot of good work. And I think it's very spiritual, but it's also very important political work. And I think Dr. Reverend Barber deserves a lot of credit for going out there and doing a lot of good work for this campaign. So I just wanted, that's my number one as far as the religious side, because he's brought a lot more attention to this that sometimes that falls into the crack. He helped get a lot of people registered to vote and brought a lot of people's attention to what the to their um, needs, and I think it's extremely important work that he does.
Yeah, he's done a lot of good work for a lot of years. I've been privileged to know him and spend a little time with him. So they really did nail it with getting people on board and doing a lot of really good communication all through the election this year, even more than in previous years. They organized really well.
So, any final thoughts before we move on?
Nope. I'm pretty
So,
chill
are we
tonight.
going?
I'm worn out from arguing with people all week. So
Are we going to finally put a nail in the coffin of 2020 and move on to 2021, which has already been 5 years worth of our
yes,
lives?
yes, we're through our 7 day trial subscription, and we forgot to cancel, so we're stuck with it. So we're just gonna find something else to watch. This is I bought an HBO Max for Wonder Woman 84, which was fucking terrible, but that's okay because I found Adventure Time, Distant Lands, and I've got Studio Ghibli, and I'm good. I'm good. I don't need my money back, and 2021 will be okay. People
I
get
am sorry about
vaccinated. We'll get a new president and vice president. Keep moving forward.
Oh, before we go any further, I have a question. Have you seen the because I don't know because I have no idea about fashion or anything like that. Can you explain to me the Vanity Fair kerfuffle that's going on?
Okay,
Uh,
my understanding is they put Kamala on the cover of Vanity Fair, and they had discussed like what photo they were going to use, and they had agreed to use a certain photo, and which was the beautiful white suit suffragette
right,
thing she wore for the win, and but they had approved the campaign. Kamala's people had approved a photo in Vanity Fair, instead use another photo of her like in a much more casual outfit, like a beige jacket and her Converse that she's known for wearing on the campaign trail. Um, and so that's the kerfuffle there, as if, I mean, it's not that big a deal. Um,
okay.
the person
I
from Vanity Fair is taking shit for it because, I mean, you don't do that, and it's tacky, and it could have been seen as a diss. It's being seen as a microaggression against a person of color, to in a specifically high fashion based thing, to post this picture of her in, like, something just less fashionable. However, I think it's backfiring significantly. The person that pulled that shit is getting nothing but garbage thrown at her, and the fact, like, I guess it went completely over her head in her microaggressive bullshit, that this whole walking in sneakers, like having walking shoes, is a point of pride for people that actually work to win elections and work at all, or have holes in their shoes, for God's sake. I mean, it's backfiring. Um, but
I
that's the main point I'm getting out of that story is
I
the
just
fashion
heard
world.
that it just looked like a horror that a lot of people, because again, I don't. A lot of people thought it was just not a good looking picture, and it was not a good looking outfit for her. And I'm just like, okay, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean, bad pictures happen everywhere, but I mean, just really rude. Like, you agree on pictures. That's how that kind of thing works.
Yeah.
It's a publication, and they just did something completely different and apparently a little over the top, just a bad photo. But it's backfiring.
Well, that's good that it's backfiring, and it should, because that is a bit rude. I mean, it's like
Yeah, I don't think
she's a
it's any. I think Kamala is kind of brushing it off. I don't think she gives a shit. I don't think they've even responded. Last I saw,
yeah. I
like,
mean, it's
whatever.
like she's got she's.
She got serious shit on her mind, right?
I mean, it's just like for our first elected woman to vice president, that we're going to make her do two jobs, because she's also going to have to be president of and decide tiebreakers. She's going to have to work two jobs and only get paid for one of them. So I mean, it's like that's how first woman vice president, and we're already making her do more work than a normal vice president normally would.
Right. So why do we have to make her do it in heels?
Yeah, like just like ridiculous. I'm just like, that's how America works. So,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, Hillary Clinton. There was a photo out there of a new book she's written. And it's like, uh, I told you so. By the butch, you told you so.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Go ahead.
I'm just like, so there's been some good memes out this week, at least to try to make me laugh a little. So
Yes. The memes
So
have been very fantastic.
before we get to our carrot and stick, Brother Bowie, will you lead us in a word of prayer?
Tribute is for our great friend Freddie Mercury. I'd also like us to remember our friends, your friends, my friends, who have died
The long version.
recently in the distant past. Friends who are still living, and in some of your cases, possibly members of your family that have been toppled by this relentless disease.
Although it's fitting right
I'd
now,
particularly
right?
like to
Yeah.
extend my
I'll
wishes to
shorten it for
friend
next one.
Craig. I know you're watching, Craig. And I'd like to offer something in a very simple fashion, but it's the most direct way that I can think of doing it. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
So our carrot today goes to New Zealand for helping their neighbors out. Um, New Zealand bought enough of the vaccine to help their Pacific Island neighbors to make sure that they can also get vaccinated as well. Um, New Zealand has a very complicated history with some of their Pacific Island neighbors and the Pacific Islanders that live in New Zealand. So I think this is a good show of unity and a good show of neighborliness to say, hey, we're going to make sure you guys get this too, so that, we don't want anybody to be sick. We feel that you guys should get this, and it's free of charge. They don't have to pay for it. And I think that's very important. And I think that that's something that other nations should be able to do too, especially for the poorer nations in our world, that we should have no problems to pay for everybody and make sure everybody gets this vaccine. And I think that's a good step for New Zealand to do that. Our stick, simpler times. Our stick was, look, I understand that you were frustrated about the $600 for the, which I still have not gotten, stimulus. But you don't need to go and vandalize Mitch McConnell's house or Nancy Pelosi's house. Again, simpler times, I understand, but you don't need to do that. You don't need to go and vandalize people's homes. You don't
I
need to
mean, it
go
is
and storm.
insane and terrifying.
It
This
is.
level of vandalism. Like, they left a pig's head on the sidewalk. Holy mother. And
Yeah,
at their house, at their address. Like, that's
yeah,
terrifying.
it is. I agree. And then you shouldn't be doing that. You should not be. That is not that's not good. That's not fair game. That's not good game. They have you can write them, you can call them, you can email them, you can send them messages on Twitter and Facebook to express your concerns. Don't go damaging their property. Don't go and do an insurrection. Those are bad ways to do that. Don't go spray painting their houses. Don't go leaving, don't do those things. Those are crimes. Those are illegal and those are bad. And you get, as my father once said, you get more flies with honey than you do with spray painting someone's house. I think that's how that goes. My point is that damaging people's properties makes them less likely to be more receptive to your way of thinking if you damage their
Don't you
property.
blaspheme in here. Don't you blaspheme in here.
That's right, sister. Sister.
Seemed like a good place for it.
It seemed like a good place. Yeah. So, with that, do you have any final thoughts before we end this 2020 retrospective of good things as we try to look to the future and positiveness?
Not right now.
All right.
I
So
want to
with
go save the world of Warcraft.
you go and do that.
That I can do.
You can do that. Thank you for joining us here at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney. You can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. You can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and any podcast catcher, as well as our website. Just Google us. Don't forget our Patreon page for $2 a month can help this show go and keep going.
I'm September. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9 of 12, and you can hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Thank you for listening today, and bless your hearts.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Okay, let's see who's on. It's not worth rating with one person. I will end